On September 16, 2006, Christine Maggiore received a call from Charles Orenstein, a reporter for the Los Angeles Times. He wanted Christine's reaction to the news that the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office was closing the criminal investigation of Christine for the death of her daughter, Eliza Jane, and no charges would be filed against her. This is a tape recording of that interview between Orenstein and Christine.
All right, so what are your thoughts on this?
Like I said, I don't know why we're the last to know these things, but I'm glad to see in this particular situation that reason and justice have prevailed.
And did you think this would be the outcome, or what were you thinking would happen?
Given the amazing disregard for fact, for physical evidence, for even simple courtesy, I had no idea what might come of all of this. None whatsoever, and wasn't about to take any chances.
Had you met with them or talked to them recently?
No. The last communication we had was on April 28th. The investigating officers contacted us directly, which was very unusual because the protocol was to go through our attorney, and they had contacted us asking for copies of letters of testimony that had been gathered on our behalf in anticipation of the meeting with the Department of Child and Family Services, in which our ability to have our son Charlie remain in our care was questioned.
Right. Okay. And so that wasn't with the DA's office. That was with the police.
That was with the police on April 28th, and on May 1st, those 5 of some 30 letters were sent to the police, and we thought they might just want to be gathering a new list of witnesses, so the names were redacted. But we had letters of testimony from school teachers, from a professional nanny, from an attorney who's been with the Juvenile Dependency Court for 19 years, all of whom have spent considerable time in our home with our family and with our children. So we sent them 5 of those, and on Monday, May 1st, we heard only the words "thank you," and it's been quiet ever since.
Now, have you, I know that you talked extensively to Dan as this was going on, and that, articulated your position, and have you changed your position at all with regard to what happened, or do you still have the same view that you did previously?
I don't think that I've ever had a position. I think that I've regarded the evidence of our experience in our lives, the evidence of my daughter's life, the medical evidence presented by the coroner's office, the conclusions which don't seem to be drawn on, from my perspective and that of other people much more qualified than I to speak to this topic, the lack of evidence for the conclusion that they drew about my daughter's death and what we've gathered since, and my awareness of the situation is always increasing, but I've never had a position. My position has been to find out the truth.
After Dr. Albayati's report, in his conclusions, do you still believe that his conclusions are accurate?
His conclusions, unlike that of the coroner, address the overwhelming physical evidence. The coroner's conclusions would be likened to saying there's a house that suddenly collapsed, I found a match, therefore this house burnt down, when in fact 40% of the foundation had been damaged. So, 40% of my daughter's circulating fluids left her circulatory system and went into every major organ in her body, which is a hallmark sign of toxic reaction, which was utterly ignored in the autopsy report. And since then, we have gathered information that is soon to be published. The lung tissue slides of another young girl who died whose death was attributed by Dr. Reby to shaken baby syndrome, whose lungs were so diseased, it shocked the pathologist and his assistant working on the case. And we're preparing right now a paper to be published that has a visual comparison of our daughter's case, in which undiseased lungs were characterized as diseased in favor of a pneumonia conclusion, and horribly, outrageously diseased lungs were ignored in favor of a baseless conclusion of shaken baby syndrome by the same coroner. Who's recently also, there was a murder conviction overturned based on autopsies that the same coroner had changed twice from an original conclusion to match police conversations and what later turned out to be a fabricated confession. So, if anything, this experience has not been one about taking a position, but of illumination and discovery.
And so where do you go with your life from here now?
Continue on the uphill battle. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, have you felt like you've been living under a cloud?
Well, there's been multiple clouds. There's been the cloud of our daughter's death. There's been my heart is still beating from when you called. There's been this tremendous cloud of suspicion and allegation and suggestion and always lurking somewhere but never overt. There's been the cloud that's created by police officers interviewing parents at school and neighbors using oral testimony from the coroner that has no basis whatsoever in physical evidence, and police officers telling parents, people who don't even know us, that, for example, a false claim he makes is that our daughter's lungs were full of herpes lesions, that her head had grown larger than the rest of her body in a desperate attempt to save her brain. We even heard of police questions revolving around the twisted notion that she had, quote, cried out in pain, yet we refused to bring her to the emergency room, end quote. It's been really awful to have to deal with the lack of factual evidence for the outrageous claims, conclusions, and investigation.
Have you, though, I mean, on a day-to-day basis, have you been worried about, what's the next day going to bring in terms of potential criminal charges or where the investigation would turn, or have you been able to kind of resume your life and kind of put this out of your mind?
No, it's never very far out of my mind. Anytime there would be a person I don't recognize walking toward our front door, a knock at an unexpected hour, a phone call where someone doesn't know how to pronounce my last name.
Right.
My heart would leap into my throat, and I just feel sorry for all the people that were selling taffy and candles who came to our door.
Right. Well, it seems like this kind of puts an end to this, at least from the perspective of the police and criminal charges, and that, well, I certainly am sure that you still have, your grieving issues that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I have grieving issues, and I have other issues I'm dealing with as well. I'm interested in knowing, what's your position?
What do you mean, what's my position?
Well, after the article that came out, I tried to get a letter published mentioning some of the facts that later came to light through other sources, and I was stymied, and things that I had brought up previously were never considered for publication. I just wondered if you have a position and what you think of the matter.
Well, I know that you've talked to Jamie Gold about that, and she's our designated person in terms of dealing with issues like that. So she's the one who takes a position in terms of if letters can run or can't run when they involve factual questions.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, who was it that came up with the headline for your original article, A Mother's Denial of Daughter's Death? A lot of people commented that seemed almost incongruous because the article was pretty well balanced between, some people said it almost seemed schizophrenic. It couldn't make up its mind if I was, a negligent mother or a great mother, a reasonable person or a wacko, and it went back and forth. I wondered how that headline was arrived at.
Well, as you probably know, when you're dealing with newspapers, the reporters are responsible for putting together the article, and the copy desk is responsible for the final okay of headlines, and so that's the way the process works on all news stories.
Yeah. I wonder if you saw that LA City Beat article that came out on June 8th.
I did.
A daughter's death, a mother's survival.
Yeah, I did.
What did you think of that?
It was interesting. I read it from the beginning to the end.
Will you be including any information from that, for example, that we have not had laboratory evidence that we've asked for, that our daughter ever tested positive, or the fact that her overall lymphocyte count was 5 times higher at death than what is the baseline to be diagnosed with AIDS according to the World Health Organization, and was well above healthy levels?
I haven't put together my story, so I don't know if I'll be including that or not.
Does it seem like it might factor in as pertinent
Well, in your mind, do you think that that's something that factors in?
Well, it seems to me that if you judge AIDS by evidence of a collapsed immune system, you need some kind of accounting of lymphocytes, and my daughter's lymphocytes, like I said, were 5 times higher than the baseline for diagnosing AIDS by the World Health Organization standard, and also well above healthy normal ranges in anyone. And the other way to infer or suggest AIDS is to claim a positive test result, given that we have not had laboratory evidence forthcoming from the coroner's office.
What do you mean by that?
We have had we've made multiple requests to the coroner's office for laboratory evidence that would substantiate the idea that Eliza Jane tested HIV positive, and that evidence in whole has been refused to us. At last attempt, our attorney drafted she tried the heartfelt route. Please, these parents want to understand, they want closure, they want to know what happened to their daughter. Won't you please provide this laboratory information? And the answer was not without a subpoena.
And so what do you plan to do?
I plan to get that information.
So you're going to file a suit?
I plan to get that information. If that's what it takes, then that's what I have to do.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate your time, and feel free to call me anytime.
Thanks. When do you anticipate this article coming out?
This will run tomorrow.
Should I look for it as a big surprise or a small? How would it be?
I'm not sure. I haven't even started writing it. I just found this out, so I'm calling. You're one of my first calls on this, so I don't know the size of the article.
Will there be a fact check before it runs?
I always fact check my stories.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. And just also too, one question that's remained unanswered in this whole time is, how the heck did you guys write that whole big story, never having had an autopsy report from the coroner's office to go by?
I'm not going to get into a discussion of backgrounds of how we write stories.
Well, I'm just, in one sense, it's a mystery. In another sense, I want to, I don't even know how to say it, given all the things that have been said by the coroner, the things that he attempted to say during his interview with ABC's Prime Time that were not in the autopsy, utterly unfounded. I can't imagine that the same things weren't said to you in oral testimony, and I just wondered why there was such restraint, or I don't even know what I would call it, but you guys didn't report outrageously fallacious things, and I don't know how you could have known they weren't fallacious, not having had an autopsy report on paper to refer to. It struck me that
we feel our story was accurate, fair, and balanced, and we continue to feel that way.
I'm just, given what the police have been told, what the coroner tried to say to ABC News, what happened is ABC News has a legal and justice department, and we showed them the autopsy pages that either contradicted or what the coroner said didn't manifest, and we had to go back and forth several times to have outrageous comments such as Eliza Jane was chronically ill, Eliza Jane was in the 3rd percentile of growth when his own report put her in the 10th percentile. This notion of an enlarged cranium trying to save her brain, her lungs lined with sores. It seems like he tries to put forth those ideas at every given opportunity, and it's interesting to me to think that I can't imagine, given the pattern, that that didn't happen in your original discussions, yet your report is remarkably, thankfully, absent of that kind of baseless information. So in a sense, I want to say thank you.
Well, sure. I mean, we take great care in putting together our reports and making sure that they're factual and balanced and accurate.
I just wonder how you do that, because you didn't have the report. So.
Well, I don't want to get into a discussion of the background of the article, so I think it stands for itself.
Yeah. Are you going to be reporting at all this time on James Reeby's record?
I don't know. I haven't written my article yet.
If you'd like, I can fax you our attorneys put together a while back a timeline of cases in which his evidence was called into question, contradicted by himself, challenged by the DA, etc. And if you don't already know, I would suggest you looked into the recent overturn of the murder conviction based on Reeby's evidence, which involved twice changing autopsy conclusions from the original based on discussions with police rather than physical evidence.
Well, you're welcome to fax it to me. I'll give you my fax number.
I have it in email. Can I email it to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, unless your email address has changed.
It's charles.orenstein@la.com.
Yeah. There's another case, too, you might be interested in referring to. I don't know. It was overturned in February at the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals in Pasadena. I think it might have been February. I can't remember, but it's Smith versus Mitchell. A grandmother had been accused of shaking her grandson to death, and from what I understand, spent 10 years in prison. And the conviction was overturned, and the judge, in making this ruling, said that there was no physical evidence that the child had been shaken, and the prosecution had tried to go forth saying a lack of evidence doesn't mean it didn't happen. So you might want to look into that, too, because I know there's been other reports on the L.A. County Coroner's Office recently with regard to contamination of evidence.
Sure, yep.
Other stuff. But if you need a referral to that, I think I have that on file. It's Smith versus Mitchell, 9th Circuit Court of Appeals in Pasadena, and that was February of this year. And that didn't involve, it didn't say that it involved Reeby, but it does involve the L.A. County Coroner's Office and a conviction based on absent evidence.
Okay.
All right?
Very good. Well, I appreciate it. And I'll look forward to getting your email.
Okay, and I'll look forward to hearing back from you with regard to a fact check.
Well, if there's anything I need to check back on.
Okay, well, there we go.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.